like in the early stages, it wasn't necessarily like a super conscious decision where we were like, we're going to come out and we're going to drive ethics and sustainability. It was more that we felt that that was the right thing to do. And so that kind of built the values of how we wanted to operate as a business.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. Before we dive into today's exciting episode with Mary Lou Ryan, the co-founder of the iconic Australian brand bassike, I'd like to share an exciting new group program that we're launching in 2024. In the dynamic world of fashion and retail, navigating the twists, turns and demands requires a strategic mindset, finely tuned skills and a sound support network. Together, we'll delve into strategies to help you elevate across three vital pillars: the future of you, the future of fashion, and the future of collaboration. So my invitation to you is to express your interest in joining myself, a lineup of inspiring mentors, and a like-minded group on a business elevation journey in April next year. The company I like to keep is always enriching, vitalising, mind-expanding, and I guarantee you will be in good company. If this has sparked your interest, please head to the link in our show notes or head to our Insta bio at Fashion Business Mindset or Fashion Equipped and click the expression of interest link to register. I'll then be in touch personally to share more with you. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Mary Lou Ryan, who co-founded bassike with Deborah Sams in 2006 to create what they couldn't find: high quality, design-led, sustainably sourced wardrobe essentials. Lou and Deb chose to work with organic cotton, Australian makers, and responsible business practices from the very beginning. The pair designed the first collections from a 1950s cottage in Sydney's Palm Beach, and bassike has the ease and vitality of Australian beach life in its DNA. Their debut collection was a considered edit of luxurious organic cotton jersey t-shirts and pants that instantly connected with wearers who were in search of contemporary designs with the versatility to work back with their existing wardrobes. Mary Lou holds the title of Director of Sustainability and Supply Chain at bassike, with a commitment to accelerating and amplifying positive change at the brand, within the community and the broader fashion industry. bassike is proudly B Corp and Climate Active Carbon Neutral certified. During our dynamic chat, Lou talks us through her early days in the industry, why and how Lou and Deb launched bassike, bassike's responsible business journey, building meaningful partnerships, local manufacturing and sustainable practices, nurturing their loyal, engaged customers, working on mindset and well-being, and so much more. I loved every minute of my time with Lou, and no doubt you will too. So let's dive in. Lou, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Lou, to set the scene, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and share a little bit of insights into your journey before becoming the co-founder of bassike?
I grew up in Melbourne, which is obviously a very different sort of setting to Sydney, and grew up in a very urban environment, which was really around obviously skate and music and more of that sort of street culture. And, you know, I loved growing up in Melbourne. I loved that feeling. I loved popular culture, and I was really interested in sort of all of that sort of space. And always loved fashion, you know, always had an interest in fashion. And so obviously when I finished high school, sort of my journey was really, I didn't go to university. I really sort of just started from the ground up, and that was sort of really how I built my experience. And
yeah, so look, my first sort of step into sort of the industry was working for the French Connection Group, which it was such an incredible experience. It was, you know, obviously a very junior role working with admin, but you really got to see, I guess, you know, a global brand coming into the Australian market. And, you know, we got to set up retail stores, and we were looking at all the collections and buying the collections, and just being able to kind of observe and watch that sort of really gave me a good sense of, you know, what it takes to actually sort of run a fashion business, even though, you know, I was in a very junior role. And then from there, my career sort of took me to Sydney, and there was an opportunity to work for the General Pants Group, which was a great experience. And I always loved menswear. I always loved the aesthetic of menswear. It's just sort of something that, you know, I personally like to wear, in terms of got that, certainly that androgynous kind of, where sort of male meets female kind of sensibilities. I worked for the General Pants Group, and I worked there for quite a few years. Firstly as an assistant in the menswear department, which that was great. And then I moved into sort of running quite a few of their in-house brands, where we would develop product and produce that under different brands for General Pants, which is just, again, a great experience into understanding product and customer, and understanding, I guess, more of the sort of the manufacturing side. And then from there, I moved into like a buying role in the women's wear department. So I had a really great time there, learned a lot. You know, it was a very young, vibrant business. You're given a huge amount of responsibility and accountability, and I got to travel, and you know, it was in a very inspiring environment. You know, at that time, you know, General Pants was just really leading in terms of that sort of streetwear, skate, fashion, surf, music, art. You know, that was really the time in that sort of street market, that whole thing kind of merged together, and learned, again, a lot of great skills. And, you know, it was, for me, that sort of practical approach to learning is how I kind of, I guess, learn, and observing and watching, and then putting that into practice, for me, has sort of been the way that I've sort of, I guess, been on the tools, is how I kind of learn. So that's been a great opportunity, and I was given lots of opportunity within that business that I'm, you know, very grateful for. And then from there, I moved across to Subi as their product manager. And they were pretty early stages into their business. I think it must have been like 4 or 5 years that they had been around. And, you know, again, that was an incredible brand, incredible creative team. You know, they were really pushing boundaries, and, you know, and they became very successful very, very quickly. And again, a great opportunity. We used to manufacture locally with them. And again, just sort of being in that very creative space, there was lots of opportunity, and also heading up the product team and working back with, you know, some of the owners in terms of delivering what their vision was just such a great experience. And then Deb and I actually met at General Pants. And so we kind of had started probably within a month of each other. And so we were kind of the new kids at General Pants, and we kind of quickly became good friends. And then she obviously went across to Subi, and then I followed probably a couple of years after. And then, we worked there together. And then, you know, that really sparked and things that we'd sort of spoken about to sort of start our own business. And that was really the start of where bassike then came to fruition.
Amazing. Well, what a journey that you had in the industry. And you were building your career, Lou. So you were on an upward trajectory in terms of your career path.
Yeah.
So obviously meeting Deb and having this inspiration and this spark, interest in your own business kind of came to fruition. And often that does happen in partnerships. You know, you start to ruminate about the what ifs and the vision and what could you do.
Yeah.
But what was the catalyst? Firstly, how hard was it to take that step into your own business? What was that whole decision-making kind of period of time like for you? Because it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a huge decision. How did that play out?
Yeah, look, it was something that I always had ambition for, you know, ever since I was, you know, a teenager. Like, I always wanted to, have my own business, in fashion. And I think sort of getting into my career very early on, sort of, as you said, like that actually gave me this really the blocks to kind of the building blocks to kind of thinking about at some stage when the time is right to sort of build my own brand and start that. Deb and I had traveled a lot together, and we used to buy a lot of our kind of cotton jersey from either America, or even at the time we started Basic, there was a lot of sort of jersey, but it was at a very luxury level. Like there was sort of this play into luxury, like the Rick Owens and the Andamulamista. Those kind of brands were sort of starting to play out, but they were $300 t-shirts that you had to dry clean. And so there was this real kind of opportunity we felt sort of to become a t-shirt brand, I guess, in the very beginning, that sort of sat between sort of that contemporary to luxury, that you could wear a beautiful tailored suit, but then you pair it back with a cotton t-shirt. And that was really the thinking, and just sort of seeing that there was a real gap in the market. Obviously t-shirting was normally more of a price pointed casual product, but we were starting to see the luxury level, but the price points were kind of almost unachievable for most customers. So it was this niche little spot that even for our wholesale accounts at the time, like for them to have $100 t-shirt, selling that back with a Dries Van Noten $1,500 jacket, it was just this sort of great kind of pairing of product that spoke to the customer and how they also wanted to wear the product, which is also how we wanted to wear it at the time too.
Yeah, absolutely love it. And I can totally relate. I had a similar path when I started my first business in wholesale. I was traveling with my lead designer, and, we'd sit down at the end of the day and we're like, oh my gosh, we could do this and this. I can see a gap in the market there. And I think that that's often a huge catalyst for people, stepping into their own business after being in the industry for quite a few years. So how did that play out? What kind of happened? Did you both, resign, start in the business day one? Was it a transition? How did it actually come to life?
Yeah, I mean, the first step was really sort of identifying that it was really a bit of a sliding door moment where, we could have gone on to work for someone for a very long time. And I think it was just that sliding door moment where there was this sort of opportunity sort of presented, and we're both at that point in our career where it was like we either take the leap or, we stay in our current roles and, we go on a different trajectory. And I think, we're both in our 20s. So it was sort of probably the right time in terms of, taking that leap. At that point in time, there was no children. Deb was married, but I was single. And it just felt like if it's not now, then when? And sort of things sort of aligned. And, so yeah, it was one of those funny things where, when alignment sort of kicks in, you're like, okay, now's the time. And so we sort of, soon after, we both left the business and started working on Basic.
Well, thankfully, you both did take that leap, because Basic is an iconic Australian brand. Where would we be without it? So let's have a chat about the brand and the ethos and the values, because you have an extremely loyal following. You've built that brand loyalty over time. It's been many years. But let's share the ethos and the values with our audience.
It was quite interesting because at the time, what we were kind of noticing was that a lot of manufacturing was actually moving offshore, and that wasn't a bad thing. It was just we could see that this great local industry was starting to kind of decline. So we kind of had sort of that bubbling away. We had the whole kind of t-shirt jersey thing, kind of cotton jersey product thing bubbling away. And sort of at the same time, there was this sort of new innovation around sustainable materials and organic cotton. And I think, again, it was like, organic cotton was sort of being used more, certainly not in the contemporary design space. It was used in sort of other products. So there was sort of this combination of, supporting our local industry, buying and using sustainable materials and using organic cotton. And then sort of obviously the design concept of t-shirt, and just sort of collectively together, it just felt like that actually felt very new and innovative. No one was doing it in the market globally. And that was really our point of difference, because we were going into a market that there is, hundreds of t-shirt brands. You can buy it at every, corner store till you go up to your Westfield, and, there's many brands doing cotton t-shirts, but we wanted to create a point of difference and really set the brand up in a way that we felt we could make a much better contribution to our community and to product.
And your business model has become so sophisticated over time. Can we reflect back to those early days? So it started with sustainability, but that was elements of organic cotton, and definitely local, as you said, was, is the heartbeat of the business. We're now in a period of the fashion industry where sustainability, circularity, transparency, it's such a sophisticated model and a complex model. If we were kind of wound the clock back, Lou, how did you start to kind of formalize that process in the early days, or build on your sustainability or responsible business journey over time? Because, and I'm asking this question for those in our who are tuning in that are in those early days, because it's not for the faint-hearted. It's no easy task, but we've all got to start somewhere. So I'd love to reflect back to how you built those pillars of your business in the early days.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because I think, like, in the early stages, it wasn't necessarily like a super conscious decision where we were like, we're going to come out and we're going to drive ethics and sustainability. It was more that we felt that that was the right thing to do. Yeah. And so that kind of built the values of how we wanted to operate as a business. And look, and even for a long period of time, we wanted to talk about the Made in Australia. We wanted to talk about our sustainability attributes, but the customer wasn't really quite ready for it. But we also know at the end of the day, through that process and being able to go into our factories, to be able to work with our knitting mill, at the end of the day, the product that would come out at the end far superseded any other product that we could get through any other channel. So it was like, we would build, we knew at the time that we could take a jersey program and take that offshore and probably make more margin. But at the end of the day, the product would suffer. And so making sure that from our perspective, we always were a design-led brand that had, ethics and sustainability built into the model of how we thought about things. And so I guess that was really the ethos. We always knew that, a customer's not going to come in and go, oh, that's an ethical t-shirt, or that's sustainable, I'm going to buy that, but I don't like the product and I don't like the fit. Yeah. We always like, if we lead with beautiful product, with quality and design, and we build the values through ethics and sustainability, that just sort of layers to the goodwill of the work that we want to do. And so it was very, again, unconscious. And because no one really wanted to know about it, we just sort of went about our business, and that's how we kind of operated. Yeah. And then it really wasn't until COVID hit that really kind of shone a light on, I guess, offshore manufacturing. It shone a light on people were asking where their products are coming from, what's it made of, coupled with, the climate emergency that's sort of happening at the moment. It was sort of all of a sudden people are now going, oh, synthetic fibers or lower impact. So even though they might not understand it in its entirety, we certainly started to hear a lot of questions and people wanting to know about, bassike and the product and where it was coming from. And as you said, supply chain is very, very complex. We've got issues around modern slavery. We've got issues around climate, materials. Like, it's very, very, very complex, and it's very deep and very entrenched. And I think fortunately for us, majority of our manufacturing happens here in Australia. We're out in the factories all the time. We have really great partnerships and relationships with our suppliers. And so that really helps, I guess, in terms of helping us to manage obviously the ethics part of our business when it comes to manufacturing. And then sort of through COVID, when that sort of questioning started to happen, we made some strategic decisions in the business to, so Deb moved into the creative director role. Through COVID, we made a strategic decision to move Deb into the creative director role, and I took on all of the responsible business, sort of sustainability and supply chain. And we just sort of felt like, those things really worked hand in hand together. And then that sort of led us on a pathway to really start to unpack all the work that we're doing, kind of not rebuild it, but it was sort of like an unpacking to kind of put back together, where we were able to kind of say, this is all the great work that we've done. over the last 17 years.
Yeah.
And where do we want to take this, and where are we heading, and what does the future look like? And even in those 3 years from where we started unpacking our business to where it is today, I mean, that space has moved very, very quickly from governance, circularity, lower impact materials, modern slavery. Like, it's really becoming something that is the conversation is happening, and there's huge changes that are being made. Yeah, and I think that for us was just great that we weren't having to rebuild anything. We didn't have to go back and fix anything. We just had to do more of the good work that we were doing, and then look to like, what does 25 look like? What does 2030 look like? And putting the business on a trajectory to kind of, I guess, create bigger impact than the work that we're already doing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it that it's been part, and I think it's important for our audience to know that this has been part of the DNA of your brand from day one. As you said, that really, it was there, it was ticking away in the background. It was just what you were living and breathing. Your focus was developing outstanding product and serving your customers. And 17 years later, here we are. And as you said, post-COVID, there's been this huge awakening. And this is, sustainability, circularity, very topical, at the forefront. As you said, governance is a huge focus at the moment. And I guess you're well poised, Lou, as a business to kind of go to the next level of, what the future of fashion is going to look like based on the work that we need to do as an entire industry in this space. Can we just step through, just for our listeners, can we step through each of the pillars of your responsible business journey? So across people, planet, and of course, profit. We've got to be profitable in business. Otherwise, we can't do all of the wonderful things that we do. Can you just touch on those pillars before we kind of start talking about, I want to talk about accreditation and some of the complexities of this space.
One of the interesting things going through this process, and to your point, without having a profitable business, there is no business. And so, the position, I guess, that we take as an organization is that we hold, people, planet, and profit in equal measure, and each of them have a seat at the table, if that's what you want to call it, to actually sort of put forward, I guess, a position on decision making that's happening in the business. And so that's sort of really, I guess, the ethos that I kind of really sort of drive through the business, in that, sometimes we have to make decisions. But as long as we're always making progress, it's that classic sort of progress over perfection. That's sort of really our mantra, when we're making decisions, and how we're kind of navigating this space, because it is very complex. And if we were just to be a brand or a business around sustainability and not have profit, then we wouldn't have a business. So it's like, how do you bring all of that together in a pathway forward that is actually taking progress every step of the way, having points of measurement to come back to. And I think that's also really important. For us, it was like, how do we set a baseline? And then from that baseline, how do we then start to progress? And that then we start to chip away at really interesting projects around, whether it's around our people in our community, whether it's about the environmental impact that we're making, and sort of linking that all back to profitability, and just making sure that they kind of all sit within partnership and in equal measure of each other.
Yes, so important. I love how you said, it's progress over perfection. I think that's really important, and that's a really important message for everyone in our industry. As long as we are moving forward and we're making those incremental improvements, we're headed in the right direction. But doing nothing is pretty much not an option anymore. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I always say too. Even through this experience, I've had, many businesses call out and have a phone call with, or a coffee. And that has always been my message. Like, just start, because you can create impact in really simple things, and I think once you start to unpack it and you start to understand the small things that you can do, you then sort of get on this journey about how you can create bigger impact. But I'm always like, just start. Don't worry about, not being perfect, because it doesn't actually exist. And we're certainly not perfect. But we are always trying to make steps forward. And also too, like, this is not, you can't do sustainability or ethics and all that on your own. Like, it is about very deep relationships, great partnerships, you coming together and saying, okay, this is what we want to achieve. How can we work back with our fabric mills and work with more lower impact materials? how can we work back with our manufacturing partners, and building, you know, solar into their facilities so it has a, you know, energy efficiency. Like, so there's so many different layers, and it's about that relationship and that partnership having a very deep connection, and bringing that together as a partnership so you can all move forward. And once you get on that journey and we start to see results, you know, it's been, you know, phenomenal, and they see the economic benefit. You know, when we converted our Jersey factory to solar, you know, a 50% reduction, and fantastic, everybody wins, you know, especially with the growing economic environment at the moment and the pressure on wages. And so finding clever ways, which we can do, that doesn't cost us any more, but also has a very positive impact. But that's a, you know, as I said, you know, deep connections and partnerships is very critical into the success of, you know, how you want to move forward as a business, because you certainly can't do sustainability on your own. It's too big.
I absolutely love that, those deep connections and partnerships. I totally agree. No one can do this on their own. And so it is just a matter of starting, opening up the conversation. And as you said, once you see the results, of course, you know, you've mentioned a couple of things that create an economic uplift, but also it would bring a lot of inspiration to the business, because it's like, we're working with our partners, we're doing this, we're making a difference. And as you said, it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So really important message there, Lou. Thank you for sharing that. Can we talk about accreditation and the importance? So bassike uses global leadership standards and strategies to inform decisions and ensure that accountability, transparency, and measurability are built into the company's entire responsible business practices and goals. How important is accreditation? And can we talk about some of the accreditation that bassike has and what that process has been like?
Yeah, look, when I sort of took on the role of responsible business, I think one of the interesting things was like, how do you tell your story? How do you get your message out there? And how you do it in a very authentic way, an effective way. And as I started to go through this process, and, you know, obviously you research and you scope out, you know, what other brands are doing, or, you know, what the market is requiring, or what your customer is wanting from you. One of the things that became very, very obvious is that trust becomes a really big part of the story, especially around ethics and sustainability. And so one of the things that I sort of felt that we needed to do was, like, you know, I could sit here and go, you know, we manufacture locally, we use organic cotton, we work with, you know, our fabric mills, but to be able to stand behind that with authority, it's really important that certification and accreditation play a part in that, because that is not you saying, hey, we're doing a good job here. It's other organizations that have robust systems in place to work through what you're actually saying, to say, yes, what you're saying is accurate. And, you know, businesses, you know, brands or certifications, I should say, like B Corp, Climate Active, like they are super robust. You know, it takes many, many months to actually go through the process. It is very rigorous. You have to present a huge amount of information. And the process is very arduous. It's very back and forth. And so then once you go through that accreditation process, you can say, this is actually what we stand for. And the B Corp process was extremely, especially for us, it was just such a great process, because we had already built this brand based on these values. But what was unreal was that we got to step back and we went, wow, like 60% of our purchases are within Australia. So we have this huge, not only commitment, but this impact that we have on supporting local businesses, helping them to keep the industry, going. And so there was these really kind of feel good moments of like, oh, that's really, we know that we did really good work here, but like, this is actually really massive. And if we continue to grow and develop, and these businesses continue to develop and grow with us, then that's a positive impact for everybody.
Yeah.
The second part of the B Corp process was really about identifying areas of opportunity. And that was also as equally as important to say, this is the great work we're doing, but here's some great sort of opportunity here for you guys to kind of, to move into. And so that for us was, again, things around what our policies are, challenging us on, have we got, what's our, certain different policies that, we might not have thought of or felt that were necessary, really challenged us to think about, how we wanted to, how do we want to treat, diversity and inclusivity in our business, and what's our policy and our position on that. And so they're the things that then spark conversation around, okay, how do we see it and what do we stand for as a business? And even though it was part of what we did, we then had to put some stakes in the ground around all of that. So there was great learnings on both sides. And so that was, great. And then obviously the next sort of certification we did was through Climate Active. And Climate Active is a government-backed certification. And that really is, and what was so important about Climate Active was that really gave us our environmental impact baseline. So we now understand what our greenhouse gas contribution is, and then sets us on a journey of how do we actually, minimize, reduce, and what the pathway forward is. So they were like two very key indicators in, from a climate perspective and environmental impact, and then obviously around that sort of purpose-driven, B Corp around people, planet, and profit. So together, those were the certifications that I was like, they drive very different messaging, but it means that we're very serious about the work that we're doing. And it's led to some great things, when our knitting mill moved, they took on solar. We looked at all of our packaging. We looked at, how we're freighting, so these are the things that you start to think about because you have a baseline to work towards. And some things are really simple, as simple as converting our photocopier to when you print something, you have to go up and press the button to print the paper. Prior to that, we used to just have reams of paper. And so they're simple things, lighting. I mean, there's so many things from an environmental perspective that you can do. And then obviously that was sort of more, I guess, more the organizational part. And then one of the real focuses for us has been on sort of lower impact materials and how we can kind of move the business into more lower impact, which is really going to be probably one of our biggest challenges, but one of the greatest impacts that we can do. But, again, that takes deep relationship with our fabric mills and our partners to talk about what they're doing in terms of innovation around materials that we can then work alongside with. So again, that partnership piece plays into it.
Amazing. So many things to unpack there, but I love that you mentioned, why do we do this? Well, it builds trust. It gives us a position of credibility and authority to say it's not just us saying we're doing this. There's actually been a third party who've had their eyes on our business and also supported us through the entire process. Because as you mentioned, Lou, this is a robust, these are Climate Active and B Corp is a robust process. I'm really interested to hear how long that process took. Obviously, it's an ongoing journey. As you said, I think the other important thing you really mentioned was the baseline. So it's given you a baseline from which now to move forward and start to really know where you need to focus to continue to make a positive impact. But how long did it take to even get to, being aware of that baseline? Is it a 12-month process, 2-year process, like in terms of the certification?
So with Climate Active, that was the first process that we went through in terms of creating our baseline and understanding what our environmental impact was. And we started with our organisation. And that probably took us a good sort of probably 4 or 5 months to actually sort of pull all that information. Obviously being our first time, we're having to sort of work through everything from, purchasing to logistics to lighting to reporting on our refrigeration. Like there's a very kind of, you basically go through, lift the hood of the whole organization and you go through and you report on that. So that took quite a bit of a process because we wanted to also make sure that we were reporting correctly. So then, our future reporting years, we were kind of always coming back to sort of this organization of what we're working on that, again, like logistics, and paper, all our shopping bags, how we were, all of that sort of plays into your environmental impact. So from there, we kind of built our baseline. Then we sort of went into the B Corp certification, and that it must have taken us probably a good 12 months to pull all that information together. And, we were very fortunate because so much was already built into our business. But we had 2 really sort of interesting things going on because when you go through the B Corp process, you can have what they call as an impact business model, which is a significant impact that your business is making in a positive way. And we had kind of 2 of those going on, which was quite extraordinary because normally most businesses only have one. And so that took a lot of us to kind of go through. And one was sort of the community and our connection to community and how we're supporting our local community. And then obviously the organic cotton program, which sort of played into obviously reduction in, water and electricity and all that kind of stuff. So that was sort of a big impact business model, which we had to kind of build those projects within the work that we were doing. So that probably took a good sort of 12 months, I think, to submit it. And then you submit, they then request more information. You then resubmit, you request more information, and then you sit down and you go through quite a rigorous sort of interview process, which was, so I think all up, B Corp probably took us maybe 18 months. But when we lodged, all of a sudden B Corp globally, I think because it's sort of obviously COVID hit, and B Corp as a governing sort of authority certification, people were looking towards that. So all of a sudden, the queues were getting massive. I think some of the wait lines are now like even 12 months and over. So it's quite a rigorous process to go through. And it's great because you have to step through that.
Yeah.
And then from there, you go into the second round of reporting for Climate Active. So every year for Climate Active, we go through a reporting process. I'm actually kicking it off this week. And so then you basically keep going back, looking at your base, like looking at the work that you've done, look at the changes that have been made. Have you had any reductions? Have you had any excess? And what are you doing, in terms of what that impact looks like going forward?
Amazing. Huge commitment for you and your team. But you've come out the other end. And as you said, you're reaping those benefits in so many ways across the business, in particular, having that baseline and then having a really clear roadmap on where to take the business over the coming years. There's also block-techs, I believe,
yes,
that you're also working on. So I had seen that you're participating in the pilot program, and this is all about reducing waste, textile recovery.
Yeah, that's right. So Adrian from block-techs, we met with him, gosh, it would have been a couple of years ago. And really it was just, he was sort of probably halfway through the vision of what he wanted to create. And we met with him at that point in time. They hadn't built their facility, but they were sort of in the kind of the piloting of how they were going to actually take what they had created to scale, which was actually fascinating because they'd proven that it can work, but how do they then scale it? And pretty much the first meeting, we were like, this sounds amazing. We love the innovation. It's coming out of Australia. It's a very exciting space for textile waste. We know the issues that have been presented. How can we be part of it? And so, so we were kind of collecting all our offcuts because with the block-techs, they do cotton and cotton polyester material fibers, and it goes through obviously their system, which creates products that they can then go on and use for composting and using for construction industry and all sorts of things. So they have their own kind of circularity, but on a much bigger scale. So so we were very fortunate to kind of partner with them. We went through one of our factories, which was our Jersey factory, and obviously local manufacturing. You see the waste of you lay up all your fabric. You put your marker on, you cut your product out, and then all the offcuts, we used to try and send them to mechanics in the local area. We were trying to minimize waste as we can, but ultimately it would end up in landfill. And so when this innovation and again, that partnership came aboard, we're like, this is fantastic because all that textile waste that was landing on the cutting room floor that would end up in landfill has now been repurposed and put through a whole new sort of facility. And so we piloted our Jersey program. And then once we sort of get through that and get momentum, obviously they're going through their own process of setting their structure up. We're setting up our structure. And then hopefully what will happen is, through time, we'll then start to roll that out to our denim factory and our casual pants factory and our tailoring factory. But at the moment, the only materials that they can take is either cotton or cotton polyester.
Yeah, that's amazing. How exciting. I mean, we're all so hungry for solutions in this space. So exciting to hear that you've embarked on that program. And as you said, there'll be that rollout plan. But you've started and already some phenomenal results, I believe.
Yeah, it's been such an amazing process. And just even, just to be part of the innovation, and and they're doing some really great things. They're starting to kind of move into sort of more social responsibility. I was talking with Adrian the other day, and one of the issues that we have is that all our fabric comes in on fabric rolls, but for their pickup they can't actually take all the fabric on fabric rolls. So how do we, if we've got 5 meters of excess fabric on a roll, like we have to take the fabric off and get it all cut up into pieces, and because for their processing. And just recently talking with him, they've got some new partnerships that are about to come out, which is going to really support society in a very positive way. And so all of a sudden you're part of this thing that's just growing, and that's really fantastic, because we need solutions, we need innovation, and we need people that are caring for the work that we're doing. And look, and that sort of also again sort of really aligns with just recently, the Seamless program has been announced, obviously driven originally by the AFC, which is now being transitioned to a new organisation. And I've been sort of sitting on the transition group of Seamless, and that's also been amazing in terms of their vision, in terms of taking our textiles industry to circularity by 2030, and just sort of seeing the appetite, the innovation, the opportunity. It's just, we know there's such a big problem, and to be able to work with that from an industry-wide perspective is really powerful, and to be able to have a seat at the table to kind of talk through from our perspective, especially because we do a lot of local manufacturing. Not only is there garment waste, there's textile waste, there's factory waste. Like, these are really big problems that we have that we need to find solutions for. But there's certainly a focus, and the Seamless program, and then you have things like block techs that are, it's just such a great time in our industry to be sort of driving change.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, because we've been talking about change for many, many years. And obviously there's, brands such as yourself that have been living and breathing the ethos of change in this space. But we need it right across the board. Well, we need it globally, basically. Yeah. And so, as you said, to have a seat at the table and to be part of driving that change and we're talking about significant scale. You've been doing it in your business, but now you're going to be able to share all of those amazing learnings that firstly you've had already along the way. So you're going to be able to share that, but then you're also learning so much and implementing new programs such as BlockTex, and no doubt there's going to be many, many more that are going to come on the radar now that we're actually having this conversation on a national level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's been a lot of conversations, certainly at a governance level in the US and the EU, and just naturally, at some point, those conversations, and these conversations are being had. Obviously, we haven't seen any sort of legislative change, but there's definitely conversation that will sort of lead into, especially around textile waste and circularity. It's such a big problem.
Yeah, I'd really encourage our listeners to go to the AFC website, so the Australian Fashion Council, and look into Seamless. So I did attend a conference recently, and it was just, again, we need to immerse ourselves in acquiring this knowledge to know where the industry is going and what our part in being accountable is going to be. And as you said, Lou, there's, we're looking at regulation. So I think we're less than 12 months away from potentially the government implementing, regulations where it's not going to be a nice to do, it's going to be a must do. And so, we're facing levies and all sorts of things. So really important that, everyone in our industry be well-versed in Seamless and solutions, and really be, have awareness around the solutions that are available to us as businesses. So, Lou, let's talk about the basic customer now. As you mentioned earlier, brand loyalty is, the heartbeat of the business. There's this beautiful blend between amazing design, beautiful product, and then the sustainability ethos of the business. Who is the basic customer?
Good question. Certainly something that we look at all the time in our business. Obviously, the business has been around for 17 years, and you start with, your core customer, and as you grow as you get older, the business gets older, often your customer follows suit. But I guess, for us, we don't necessarily look at, customer in terms of, age group, or, we just really look at sort of, I guess, a mindset. We look at who's our emerging customer, who's our core customer. And we range, the beauty of Basic is that it really talks to so many different people. But what we do know is that we have a loyal customer. We have a customer that loves quality, they like design, and they really they like to buy into the wardrobe, staples that we have been sort of known for, and that sort of uniform concept where you can have Basic for a long period of time, and you kind of pull it out and bring it out every season. I mean, I still have products in my wardrobe, 5-10 years later, that I bring out that are still relevant. A customer, we have, a very strong female customer. We also have, a menswear customer. And I think there's just such an opportunity there for us to continue to grow and take our brand further. And that's sort of really what we're working on at the moment, is how do we bring new customers to the brand? How do we tell our story? Because we are quite niche in some ways, I guess. We're not in any of the big Westfield centres as yet. We're more on the high streets of, Paddington, Armadale. Just for our focus is how do we, at the moment, how do we kind of bring that emerging customer in and start to grow our customer base. But they're definitely they love fashion, they like good fits, they like quality, they love fabrication, they like to feel good, they like to be part of a community. Our retail stores are very community focused, and you'll go in there on a Sunday and people aren't even shopping, they're just coming for a chat because they've gone to get a coffee. And we treat, we become, they're friends of the brand. They're part of what we do. And we look at that, in our business, that whether you're a customer or supplier, you're just really an extension of what we do.
I'd love to know how that community element plays out online. When you're in a physical brick and mortar, environment, it's so much easier. Of course, you're having, in-person conversations, and you're creating a beautiful environment where it's very inviting for your customers and very welcoming. Yeah. How do you apply that to the online experience for Basic?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I don't think we've resolved that yet, to be honest. I think, the digital space is very tricky, and we talk about that a lot. We have these incredible in-store experiences where we get beautiful emails all the time, from customers that come in, have had a great experience and they didn't feel very good, and they've walked out with a bag of clothes and they feel amazing. I think the digital space, I don't think anyone has really kind of nailed it in terms of that connection to product that you get in a physical space. And whether that's ever going to be able to happen, I'm not sure. But I haven't seen anybody globally that has done that, where you kind of jump online and you go, oh, wow, I get a really good sense of that product, or I can, the sensorial piece that you get. I guess, we do focus on, obviously, customer service. That's a big area of focus for us. But I think that's going to be a challenge for most businesses, really, about how do you get that community feel. And I guess it happens outside of the business. I guess, you've got, your Facebook market groups, and you've got all these kind of groups that are happening outside of your business, but inside the business, I think that's going to be, that's also an opportunity for us to kind of continue to build that sort of online community.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's an ongoing focus for any e-commerce business out there, that connection to customer. It's very important. We have to find ways as a business to do that, whether that's, the way that the product is delivered and there's a beautiful message about the brand, or you are getting invited to virtual events these days. We're so lucky, I guess, post-COVID, there was always a silver lining. We've had this massive transition to embracing technology in the virtual space. So there are ways that we can do that in the e-commerce space, but it's not as seamless as the in-store experience. So I guess getting that balance right, if you are not purely online, then you've got to really capitalize on those physical moments in time that you get to spend with your customers.
Yeah. And you're seeing that, I guess too, you're kind of seeing that through obviously different channels now, through social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok. I think those types of channels play a big influence in that sort of, I guess, that digital experience about, how you can present your product in a new and interesting way, which then drives you back to your e-commerce site.
Yeah, absolutely. Social media is key. I mean, we're all living with that phone in our hand. So if you're not leveraging social media, guys, then you're a little bit behind. Let's talk a little bit more about the sales and marketing channels. So you have retail stores, you have online, you have wholesale. Do we have international? Maybe just share with our audience what your key channels are and what's worked for you from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, look, I think, over the last couple of years, our focus has definitely been on Australia. Obviously our retail stores, we've got, great retail stores. We've got a wholesale business, and we've got a department store business with David Jones. And that is, those sort of three areas of our business sort of make up the bulk of our business. Before sort of COVID hit, we had kind of a very strong US business, which was great. But, obviously sort of through that COVID period, you go through that point of reflection. And that was one of our reflection points, was like, you know what, there's such great opportunity here back home. And so we slowly started to pull out of the international markets. It was very hard to control your product in those markets. And, we also knew that, to go into those international markets, you really need to build teams in those markets. And we were probably at more of a growth phase here domestically and wanted to focus here. Then with the opportunity, once that's set, to take on those international markets again. I think there's always that possibility that the international markets, and it looks all very glamorous and all that kind of stuff, but it's very volatile, and it has been very volatile. I mean, we've had great businesses over there, but I think when the time is right for us, we will look at those markets again. But yeah, there's definitely more opportunity domestically for us at the moment.
So do those opportunities domestically involve opening up more stores?
Yeah, I think so. We're always looking. We always want to look to grow the brand. We're always looking at sort of retail opportunities. I think, one of our real successes is our retail experience. So, playing to our strengths as well. We create beautiful stores with a beautiful feeling. So yeah, always looking for retail stores. And look, I think it's been a bit of a tricky time sort of post-COVID, but I think as things start to stabilize, you start to look for growth opportunities. We also want to really kind of, again, invest into our own e-commerce channel. And so that's really been, again, the focus for us, is like, how can we really maximize our opportunity here? We're sort of going through a bit of a deep dive into it at the moment, where we're sort of just having sort of some fresh eyes looking on what you're doing, because, when you're in a small to medium-sized business, sometimes you're just so in the day-to-day that, you don't get the opportunity to step out. So, having people to kind of come in, have fresh eyes, help us to look at things differently. Again, this space is moving so quickly. So keeping abreast of what's coming. So it's a very, you have to be so agile in a business of our size, because, all the heads of departments, like, they're running the day-to-day, but they're also running strategy.
Yes.
So you'd love to be just able to sit in strategy all day, but, there's, at the end of the day, there's a job to get done. And so that dance and that agility is also really important. But we're always sort of, e-commerce is and really, I guess, making that omni-channel experience very seamless between e-commerce and our retail business. That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's have a quick chat about the artists that you're collaborating with, because collaborations are so important. And again, it's another element of community connection and voice to customer. Let's share a little bit about your recent collaborations.
Yeah, look, I mean, that sort of really came about probably about 12 months ago, where it was sort of, we wanted to do things a little bit different. We wanted to sort of bring sort of interesting people into the business, and obviously interpreting our brand through their own vision. So we engaged with Bart, who's obviously a long-term friend and partner of the brand. He's shot many of our campaigns, and it was really just, giving it to him and saying, we want to do something interesting. We want to get out of our way. We want you to interpret the brand. What do you think? And that's really where it kind of started from. And, sort of the play on the logo was also really important, just to kind of reinterpret that. And so he went away and really put the project together. And he's such an advocate for emerging artists. And so he sort of went away and briefed in and sort of came back and, worked back with the team, and the product team and everyone in the marketing team to sort of put all the concepts together. And so it was actually just such a obviously when it's your own business, you want to be involved in everything. But it was one of those sort of, again, one of those moments where like, let's just get out of our way and let's just see how they interpret the brand and how they see it. So it was really lovely just to watch over time that kind of evolve. And I think where it landed was just so positive for the brand. We've always been very connected with creatives. And this was just another way of doing things a little bit differently for us.
Yeah, absolutely love it. It's phenomenal. I really encourage everyone to take a look. And I love just the behind the scenes element, just having an insight into the whole process as well. I think as a customer, it's a really good brand experience as well. So congrats on that. It's it's phenomenal. So Lou, let's talk about the retail sector for a minute. We've experienced so many significant shifts over recent years. In your opinion, what are the most noteworthy changes and trends that you've observed within our industry?
Gosh, where do I start? That's a really big question. Look, I think what I've really noticed the most is that, the brands that have a point of difference, that are doing their own thing, seems to be the ones that are really kind of hanging in there and still doing well. Yep. The brands that maybe didn't have a strong brand or strong DNA of who they are, they're the ones I feel like have probably found a little bit wanting. I think the retail space is really interesting. I think sort of that standard, put stock into your store and sell the product, and that kind of old school retailing. I think that there's been a massive shift into changing those retail spaces into a place of community where people come and want to be part of. I think that's probably the biggest sentiment that we're kind of seeing. And I think, it's, again, I think it's through that sort of COVID period where people sort of became very disconnected, and people want to connect again. So I definitely feel like that's, from a retail perspective, that's certainly been a huge shift in terms of, again, just sort of building spaces where people come and they want to be part of and have, influence into.
Is there anything around innovation and technology that you've embraced in recent years? And I think because a lot of businesses have basically move forward in light speed because their hand has been forced because of what we've been through during that COVID period. So is there anything, we know AI, metaverse, anything around innovation technology is very topical. Is there anything that you've implemented or embraced or looking into?
Look, I think in terms of sort of innovation, I guess sort of one of the areas that we kind of are really interested in is how we take, it's a beautiful process in terms of how we construct products through, pattern makers and our product and the design piece. But I think there's a real opportunity there from an innovation technology perspective of how we can, start to work with that in more of a 3D avatar kind of way. That's something definitely that I've certainly been looking at about how, and that will bring efficiencies into the business. There's so many different, even things like ship from store. I know that's a really simple innovation and technology that happened a couple of years ago, but that had a huge impact in terms of opening up our inventory, where we used to have separate warehouses. Our warehouse would ship the goods and our retail will sell the product. But now that innovation has allowed that we have all these different destinations, all these almost like mini warehouses through our retail store, which has actually been able to service our customer. I think obviously AI is definitely something from a digital space too. I think, in terms of talking to your customer and talking to the products that your customer is interested in and engaging with them with products that they might have bought in the past and saying, well, you've loved this kind of shape before, and now we've got these other versions of, are you interested? I think AI will definitely play apart from a technology and innovation space. So, we're always looking at the innovation. Obviously technology and innovation is a big cost of the business. And so we just have to kind of, again, methodically kind of work through where are we going to get the most efficiencies and where we're going to get the most traction. But I guess one of the other areas which I find, really interesting is, really what's going to happen in blockchain technology and around provenance of product and transparency. And you can sort of see that happening, I guess, from a manufacturing perspective. Blockchain technology is going to start to come back from provenance of raw material, right through to finished garment. And so from my perspective around responsibility and sustainability, for someone to be able to look at a product and go, okay, I know where my yarn, my raw fibers come from. I know who's made my garment. They've been paid ethically. They paid a living wage. So that blockchain technology around product is going to be really an interesting space of where that kind of goes. especially when you move into circularity in the resale market and rental market as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There's so much excitement happening in that space. So I think it's just really important to be informed and engaged. And as you said, you have to have the efficiency. You've got to have the result of efficiency in your business, because there's a cost to any technology. But there's a lot of excitement happening in that space, as you said, with blockchain, with AI, and so many options as well, just like every other decision in our business. Now, Lou, let's quickly talk about you. I would love for you to share with our audience, no doubt your role. I'm sure we've got a little insight, just a snippet of an insight into how dynamic your role is today. So to really work optimally within your business and in life, what practices, routines, or support systems do you have in your life that help you with mindset and well-being?
Yeah, good question. I think, mindset is, absolutely, critical into being able to manage the enormity and the stress and the pressure, running your own business. But, I do, I guess in terms of my practice and what I do, I practice Keely meditation, which is it's just a great check-in with me every day, every morning, every night. And that sort of really helps me just to keep, I guess, connected to myself. I think when you have a lot of outward energy and you're talking to a lot of people and there's a lot of work that is going out, it's really important, every day just to connect with myself and see how I'm feeling, process, any sort of difficult conversations that might have need to happen that day, or things that might be coming up, because, this space is moving very fast. So I'm very I do a lot of sort of work on myself. I'm a mother of 3 children, so life is very, very busy. But I also am very conscious and aware of the things that I need to do to keep myself in check. I've got a great partner who is incredibly supportive. He actually looks after the kids full time, which allows me to work in the business full time. And also very aware, on a Sunday afternoon, I might say, look, I've just got to go for a walk. I just need some space. I need to go for a walk, or I need to go get some reflexology, or I need to go and do Pilates or yoga, whatever it might be. And for me, I need it to change up a little bit. I like to do different things, and I kind of just check in with what I need at the time. And if it's something about sort of going more inward, I might do a yin class. If I need to move my body because I've been sitting all day, I've been in the car all day out in factories, then, doing a Pilates class or going for a walk or jumping in the ocean is also really important. But, again, there's no such thing as perfection. Trying to keep everything in balance is also difficult. I mean, I'm a Libran. So my whole life is about keeping things in balance, and sometimes it's really out of whack, and, but I try and keep things as simple as possible. Try not to overcomplicate, try and carve out my weeks in a very organized way, in that, it's very easy to also just make yourself really busy. I also try and unbusy myself so I can have space and freedom just to walk past someone and have a chat for 5 or 10 minutes, or see something that's happening in the business and go, do you know what, we probably need to sit down for half an hour and have a coffee or grab a bite to eat and just see what's actually going on in there. So again, it's very easy to busy yourself, at making sure that you actually unbusy yourself, so it gives you space and freedom just to kind of observe and sort of have and be a little bit detached, I guess.
Yeah. I love that. Unbusy yourself. I mean, there was so much gold in there. Of course, you've got an amazing support system. You're connecting with self, which is so important, again, through meditation. As you said, no one's perfect, but having these tools or modalities that we can reach out to any point in time, like your Pilates, and even going for a walk, self-care is so important. But what I'm taking away from that is to unbusy ourselves, because I tell you, that's something that's the holy grail that I've been working towards. And I've started to actually kind of block out time in my diary in the mornings for me, so that I can make sure that my practices are consistent, because sometimes I'm really good and then they drop off the radar. So as we know, consistency is key, but it's not easy. It's a discipline, isn't it? Focusing on self.
It really is. And one of, the things that you learn over my career is also to, like, there's things that I'm good at and there's things that I'm not really good at. And so the things that I'm not good at, have great people around you that you can bounce ideas off, that you can talk to, that can help you process and work through stuff. I think that's also really important, because often if you can't do it, you just get stuck, and you might sit on something for a day and going, I'm not getting anywhere. So you waste all this energy and time. And then you pick up the phone, you're like, oh, why didn't I do that at like 9 o'clock this morning? And I would have been over that in 10 minutes, but I've sat and I've let it fester. And so having really good people that you trust around you is really important for your own development, and also for able to sort of process and get through things quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Lou, do you have anyone around you in a mentorship role? Obviously, you've got your team and you've got your business partner and you've got your family. Have you ever sought external support from a consultant, a coach, a mentor over the journey?
Yeah, I have. And it's been at different times, you need different things. There's times where you've had to, deep dive into therapy because you feel that there were some things that were blocking you and that you needed to move through that. There was times where I was like, I really need to be pushed and challenged. So I worked back with a life coach that has actually pushed me into areas that have said, okay, if you want to be at the top of your game, this is sort of what you need to do from, health mindset. And so, so I kind of feel like there's no set and forget. It's about just, again, once you sort of start to understand yourself, and that's the joy of actually getting older, as you get older, you kind of like, oh, thank God, like I can get rid of all this stuff that I don't no longer have to carry anymore. And, and you kind of start to become more aware of what your needs are. And so I've sort of, have different people that have come in and out of, my career that have really supported and challenged and questioned, and pushed me along. And so, I encourage that. And even in your own networks, you probably have a friend that, might be, someone that works in law, or you might have a friend that might be working in consumer, or, someone that is works in the industry. And so there's all different people. So you've got, just use your networks and ask the questions, and it might be, and sometimes you might connect with them and sometimes you don't too. And sometimes you might go, okay, that's all that I needed now. And so I always make, a big effort to just carve out time to have a coffee with someone, because you just never know what's going on for people.
Yeah.
You never know what's pipelining for them. You never know. There's been people that I've caught up with coffee, and then 6 months later I'm like, oh, do you know what, they were talking about this, that was really interesting, I'm going to reconnect with them again. So I think also broadening your networks is really important. I know one of our old publicists that we work with, and one of her advice to us was like, whenever you go to an event, make sure you connect with 3 people in the room. There's no point going somewhere if you're not going to introduce or connect with someone. And that also, I remember the first time, because I was actually very shy, I used to find it so daunting. I'd go to these events and I'd like, I just want to get out of here. And then by the end of it, now I'm like, I'm really curious and I'm really interested to go to this tonight. And I hope I meet someone really interesting. And I find that happens more often than not these days. And so that's really great too.
Oh, some great messages there. And I love that last one about the networking. I used to be the same. I used to go in, kind of try and sneak in, sneak out. I was very introverted in my younger years. But like anything, it's a skill. It's like that self-confidence, eventually it becomes your superpower. We may not all be, extroverts and life of the party. But as you said, go in with a conscious, mindset around, okay, I'm going to connect with 3 people. I'm going to keep it short and sharp initially. And again, it's like a muscle that you build over time.
Definitely.
So many great messages there, Lou, especially in regards to reaching out, having a coffee with someone. None of us can do this alone. So much gold there. Now, Lou, just one last question. What's most rewarding for you in regards to owning your own business?
Yeah, look, I think probably the most rewarding, there's so much that's rewarding. I guess from, one aspect is the people. I find when you're working with good people and you get good outcomes, it's just so rewarding, because I think, again, people play such a big part in the success of a business. And if you have good people around you, you will create a successful business. So I think people plays a big part. I find that really rewarding. I love watching, and it's kind of interesting. I sort of head up the supply chain. So a lot of the team that we have, a lot of them come through the production team. It's a really good entry point for people to come into our business and learn about the business of real local manufacturing. And it's just been so lovely watching so many of those team members actually move through the business, move into the design team or move into the buying team and, move through the business. So I love, it's very simple, but I just love watching people develop and grow. I find that really rewarding. I love when we talk to your when we talk to our customers and they have really positive things to say, or they talk about a product or a piece that they love or something that they bought or the experience. So again, I find that really rewarding. I love going out to our factories and sitting on the crate and having coffee with them. I find that, I just love that. That's really the heartbeat, and that's where you get to see the product and the people that, are working alongside you. So yeah, there's so many aspects to, the feeling that you get and just how lucky, I feel in terms of the people that we have in the business and the long-term partnerships and relationships that we've been able to have over the years.
Lou, thank you so much. You and Deb and your team have built an iconic Australian brand that we absolutely love. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your inspiration with our audience. We can't wait to see what bassike does next.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Lou. Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. And if you'd like to find out more about our Start Your Fashion Business program and your mentor collective, head to our website fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.